Hello and welcome back to another very special episode of Inside Voices First Takes, where I, as always, am Adam Rubin, but today I am not joined by Colin Binning. I am joined by our very special Star Wars guest reviewer. Ryan, you want to introduce yourself?
I'm Ryan. I'm the very special Star Wars guest interview person. I'm here. Hi.
This is Ryan Stanley, and he's been kind enough to join me for this review of Solo, a Star Wars story, because our intrepid Colin Binning is reporting from the field in Ireland this week. And so his mind is elsewhere, but Ryan and my minds are directly focused on Solo, a Star Wars story. Explain to the people a little bit of your level of fandom of Star Wars. I mean, I enjoy Star Wars. I enjoy a good Star Wars film. And I would say that I'm into the franchise. But I really don't have anything on you. You're at a different level than me.
Yeah. I love Star Wars. I grew up with it. I watched the original trilogy on VHS so much as a child that my mom had to put a strict limit on I could watch one movie once per weekend. Because I would just marathon them constantly over and over. So that is the level of my fandom. And then in terms of, I read books from the original expanded universe, and I read like the sort of supplementary materials, like, ooh, let's talk about this random race of people over on this crazy ass planet that's made up of just a fungus or whatever. So delved into that. And then, in terms of the overall series, I would say I am very strictly in the camp of anything after 1983 is garbage and deserves to be burned in a giant dumpster, space dumpster, if possible.
Okay. So you have some strong opinions. I think it's fair to say you have strong opinions about Star Wars and the Star Wars extended universe. So which is why I thought you would be such a perfect person to talk to about this movie.
Yeah.
I'm fascinated to know. I mean, I went in, and I'll be honest, I had very mediocre expectations for this movie.
Yeah, I would say that's realistic, because that is my experience with all of the new movies since Force Awakens, is that my feelings are pretty just meh. They do a lot of stuff right, and they do a lot of stuff wrong.
All right, well, let me be more specific. I had lower expectations for this movie than any of the previous Star Wars movies.
Oh, wow.
Both because of some behind-the-scenes drama that was widely publicized and cycling through directors and such in the middle. That never helps a film. But also because I didn't really think from the trailers that the casting choices were great. I didn't love this guy being cast as Han, and I didn't really love Glover being cast as Lando Calrissian. I just went in, I was like, oh, man. I was worried. I was worried about this film. I was worried whether they were going to be able to pull this off at all. And
Sure.
I'll say, for my part, I was pleasantly surprised that it certainly exceeded those admittedly rather low expectations. I thought it did better than that. I did think it did better than that, but I'm curious what you thought.
Yeah, well, I mean, so just like you, I went into this and I was worried on so many fronts. Number one worry just being, do we need a backstory for Han Solo? I was definitely in the camp of part of what makes his character cool is that they communicate so much with so little in the original trilogy, and kind of the mystery. It's that old adage of, leaving your imagination to fill in the gaps is what makes it more powerful. So it's just like, crap, are they going to ruin this by giving us too much information? Which arguably that's what the prequel trilogy does, just gives us way too much information about people. It's just like, no. And then add in the behind-the-scenes drama. I myself am a big Chris Miller, Phil Lord fan. Watch How I Met Your Mother, and the episodes they wrote are some of my favorites. And Last Man on Earth is also a great, witty thing. And obviously the Lego Movie. The Lego Movie was obviously their breakout. So I was really excited to see if they could bring that frenetic energy and that really pop culture or very pop culturally literate wit to something like this. It seemed perfect for a movie like, where you're featuring this rogue who's just kind of like, smirking at everything and all that kind of stuff. And then they bring in Ron Howard to direct, which nothing against Ron Howard. I think he's a very stable director, but that's exactly why I was kind of worried. I was like, you're bringing in the saltine cracker of directors. Yeah, he gets the job done, but
Oh,
Maybe not as a little.
no love for Ron Howard. Okay.
He's no. He's what I'm trying to get is he's a he's a journeyman director through and through. I wouldn't say he does anything that really stands out. Like there's nothing about his style that's particularly attention grabbing. It's solid. It's a solid style. But again, when compared with like, oh man, it would have been so cool to get that sort of personalized stamp that Miller and Lord could have put on this. It's kind of like, oh man, do I want to go see the guy that directed the Da Vinci Code movies making a Star Wars movie when I could have had this other thing? So so I had the same worries you had going into it, and I honestly had low enough expectations that had you guys not asked me to do this show, I would have waited for it to go to video, honestly. That's how much, again, and that's just combined with the fact that we've had 3 movies so far in this new cycle, and every single one of them has just left me going, meh. So low expectations. What was the question? Did I enjoy it?
The question is, did the movie meet, exceed, or fall below those fairly low expectations?
Yes, exceed. Definitely exceeded in a good way. It wasn't even just, oh, I expected mediocrity and it just happened to crest mediocrity and okay, I feel satisfied by that. It very much exceeded my expectations. I found it fun. I found it charming. I thought it had good energy. Genuinely good set pieces. Did not have the massive plot hole and character inconsistencies that these other 3 movies in the new cycle have had. So exceeded my expectations, and I was very pleased by that.
Okay, so would you recommend to the audience that they go see the movie or that they not?
100%. 100% recommend.
100% see it.
Yes, definitely, because it's one. It's one of those things where even if you're so hardcore and so stuck in the past, which I would say, I am, I'll admit it. Like I said, anything after 1983 is garbage. But even then, I'm always ready to be pleasantly surprised, and I'm always ready to see a new spin and a new take on this stuff. And so I think but I think you'll genuinely have fun. Obviously, don't expect the original trilogy. None of us ever should. But I think that it even rises to a level above, again, even those low expectations.
Okay, so that's one very, very excitable see it from Ryan. And I'm going to say I could still pass. I could definitely still pass. It did exceed my low expectation. It was better than I thought. I will definitely say that it had certain moments that were charming. And the casting, especially of Lando, I actually thought worked much better than I expected. I thought he did a very good Lando.
Yeah.
I could see the continuity in that character, which I didn't feel from the trailers, but I did from the movie, and I was very pleased about that. Chewie's great as always. There were some prize casting choices, like the Lando's droid co-pilot, who I thought was impeccable.
Great.
But ultimately, while it's no criticism against the actor who played Han Solo in this movie, I thought he did his darndest, and there was nothing about his performance that was bad acting, but he really did not feel like Han Solo to me. He just didn't. Hashtag not my Solo. He just didn't work for me. And I would say, you could definitely pass. But whereas before I was expecting to say, don't ever bother seeing this, I would see it on video. I would say video is when it comes out on demand, this would definitely be worth a rental to me. $5.99, rent it for the night, have a fun time with your friends, totally worth it. Full movie ticket, up to you, but I think you could take it or leave it. So one very strong see it from Ryan, one I'd wait till it was on cable from me. Worth a couple bucks to rent, but maybe wait till it's out of theaters, unless you just have to have it. If you have to have it, then go for it. So now, as always, we're going to get into the heat of the meat here. So spoilers ahead. That's our recommendation about seeing it. If you want to go see it, go see it. Otherwise, wait till it's available on rental, and then come back, watch the rest of this episode, because now we're going to get into spoiler territory. You have been warned. Ryan, let's get into specifics. I would like to say for the record that I think that part of my experience, part of the reason my experience was more positive than I anticipated was because I saw this with a fantastic audience. They were the most unbelievably empathetic crowd that I think has ever seen a Star Wars movie. I'm talking, these people were moaning sympathetically for the squid who lives in the center of the maelstrom when he started to get pulled apart by the black hole and his face rips off. People like, oh no. Like that level of empathy. They laughed at every single gag, every single time. It was pretty impressive. It was almost distracting. They were so into the movie.
Was it? Is there like a medical clinic right next to the theater you went to, and they were testing some new drugs?
These were just the hardcore Star Wars people. They loved it.
Okay, I mean, power to them. God bless them. I'm just
it was very fun.
I just maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm biased against squid things. I've never had any sort of empathy for a squid thing, so maybe that says more about me than them. But
I think it probably does. So I just like to point out that I think that added a lot to the fun of this movie for me. So I'm curious about your experience. Now that we can get into the details, you said it felt like it, ticked a lot of boxes for you. What you really liked about it?
I mean, first off, I will say I'll totally grant from an objective point that hitting all the boxes for me also basically the boxes to hit for me are don't be a shit movie, which again I feel like
it's hard to do.
That is hard to do, and again I feel like the other movies in this cycle have not accomplished that in even just small, easily fixable ways. So my experience was I went and saw it just last night. I went with our good friend Tristan Camacho, and we went to a theater down in Culver City. And I think we had the opposite experience of you in that the theater was fairly full, nothing. Just like no reactions from the audience. Even the lines and moments that I thought were pretty funny and worth a good out loud guffaw, got chuckles from the audience. I don't know if it was just because we went to a later showing, but still, it was like at 8 o'clock on a Friday. And the first Friday that it's out. So weirdly, the audience was very, very non-committal about a whole lot of it. But honestly, I feel like as a Star Wars fan going into it, that doesn't bother me as much because I'm already obviously bringing my own energy and expectations, and because again, I'm mostly going into this being like, oh God, how much of a disaster is this going to be, or how mediocre is it going to be? The fact that you put into it,
yeah. So you obviously didn't feel it was a disaster. You think they pulled it off. So what do you feel like they pulled off exactly? What did you like about this?
Okay, so definitely one of the big successes for me is, just like I said, I feel like the other movies in this cycle in particular, they end up having these huge plot holes and character inconsistencies and people making these decisions that don't make any sense. They only work to serve to move things forward. I feel like this was pretty bereft of that. Nothing leapt out to me as offensively jumping the shark, as it were. So that was, the story was solid from start to finish. The character motivations were solid from start to finish. I want to circle back to what you said about Alan Eldrick, or whatever his name is. I think it's Alan Eldrick, the guy that they got to play Solo.
It's not my Solo. Yes, go on.
Not your Solo. I mean, Harrison Ford will always be my Solo, obviously. So, but I'm not going to go so far as to creating a hashtag. But I'm actually on board with you in that within the first 5 minutes of the movie, I could tell right from the beginning it's like he's kind of trying to be Harrison Ford, but he's also trying not to be. He's trying to do his own thing. And within the first 5 minutes, I was just kind of like, I almost even kind of feel like this isn't even a Han Solo movie. It's just kind of like, look at this roguish guy out here in the Star Wars universe. And I started to wonder, might this even be better if it had just been a kind of standalone like Rogue One? And it's just like, cool, check out this guy. He's a Han Solo-like character. Let's just kind of follow him around on some capers and adventures. But that said, you can debate endlessly, he isn't enough Solo, or he is, or whatever. I just kind of sunk into it just because whatever character Alan Eldrick was creating, I was into it. He was charming, he was roguish, he was youthful and idealistic. So right from off the bat, I'm like, I'm into it. Amelia Clark, Khaleesi is his girlfriend. I mean, how could I not root for somebody who manages to pull off that?
Well, and you get to what I think is a very good point. I think it would have been much better if he wasn't Han Solo, but you released the exact same movie and just gave him a different name. You would have fixed so many of my problems with this movie. Not just the fact that he does not remind me of Harrison Ford, other than the fact that he's also good looking and he smirks sometimes. He was smirkier than Harrison Ford. Whatever. But what really gets me is all the plot twists that were thrown in there really felt to me, a lot of them just for the sake of twisting. And the big one that jumps immediately to mind is the fact that they've set up this whole alternate thing, with the Sunset Squad, whoever those people are, that oh my God, the Sunset Squad, and she's a real part of it. It goes deeper than just the one guy, and it's all being run by Darth Maul, who's still alive, survived being cut in half and falling down that chute. And okay, whatever. What?
It's not Darth Maul. There was an entire race of aliens that's their thing. They've got the little horns and they tattoo their faces.
That wasn't supposed to be Darth Maul with the same face makeup and identical everything?
I mean,
I think it was. I think he's supposed to be Darth Maul.
He was very clearly cut in half in the first in Phantom Menace, and even though we are existing in this fantasy sci-fi universe, I don't think you come back from that. That's not a thing.
Nerds of the internet, back me up on this. I am pretty sure it's supposed to be Darth Maul.
And the people, I'm right. There's a whole race. There's a whole race. I'm pretty sure it's supposed to be different. I think.
Okay. Comment below on that one, because I would love to hear what other people thought about this.
He was more rotund than Darth Maul, unless Darth Maul stopped hitting the gym.
This is a lot later in the timeline. Those are the prequels, so he should be an older man at this point.
I still don't think it's Darth Maul. It's not Darth Maul. It's some other...
Okay, all right. Whoever he was, Darth Maul or otherwise. Yeah. The point is, and he's got this deeper thing with this whole other dark side group of raiders or whatever their deal is, this whole underworld that Khaleesi is apparently a part of, and that's going to be some kind of antagonist to somebody, except we already have the later movies, and they definitely never come up ever, so they don't really exist. Why did we set up this whole spin-off? They're obviously going to do something with it. Are we just going to have a bunch more filler movies and resolve all of that before episode 4? When it really felt like the end of this, from Han Solo in big air quotes perspective, was, oh great, I'm going to go to Tatooine and start working for Jabba the Hutt. Like, kind of pretty decent transition into where we find him in the cantina at the beginning of A New Hope. Now we've set up this whole other organization that we got to... I mean, either it was plot twist for no reason, or else, what are you going to do with that? Whereas if he wasn't Han Solo, and you were going to have this whole parallel group of movies with the girlfriend and what this group was up to while the main heroes of episode 4 were doing the Empire thing, you've got sort of this alternate group of rebels and this alternate group of bad guys. That would have worked. It would have worked better if he wasn't Han Solo. I totally agree with that.
Yeah. And you know what? And I agree with that too. I think it would have been a much more interesting movie and intriguing movie overall. And I think the reason I just kind of settled into it is because, again, from the get-go, I just kind of accepted, all right, well, it's not that movie. It's Han Solo. They're calling it Han Solo. He is Han Solo. Let's just roll with it. Again, the action, the charisma won me over. But I 100% agree with you. I think it would have been. I think it's much more interesting. Let's get away from the Solos and the Skywalkers. Let's go. Yeah, I think that's such a great idea. Let's talk about this other sort of alternate dark side craziness that's going on. Let's get into that seedy underworld. Because that was another thing I liked about this movie, is that I also thought it was the most adult Star Wars movie in terms of like seeing people interact and taking part in, like, they're at bars, they're drinking drinks that are very obviously alcoholic drinks. There's that whole scene with him and Khaleesi, because she's no one else, she's Khaleesi. Him and Khaleesi, they're in the closet, she's trying on the capes, and there's this great shot where he's like leaning in the doorway, and you see the bed in the background, and he's like, I thought we could talk, and then, she's like, ha ha ha, back off, flyboy, or whatever. And it was just like, oh man, that's like the first suggestion of sex we've ever seen in Star Wars. And then of course they're like making out hot and heavy in the closet. Anyway,
in the cape closet.
Yeah, let's make this completely different. This doesn't need to be a Han Solo story. Let's make this something else. But I rolled with it. I went with it. As far as how does this fit into the overall timeline, again, I still agree with you. I think it could still work, though. It's not clear how much time before episode 4 this takes place. This could still be several years before episode 4, because Han was working for Jabba, doing jobs on and off for a while. So just because he says, I'm going to go to Tatooine and take part in this new thing with this new guy, that could be an on and on relationship. I still, do we need a trilogy to explore all this? No, but at the same time, I was intrigued enough, and I think this is an intriguing enough idea that, you know what, I'll stick with it. The movie ended, and I was kind of like, well, shit, I want to know what Khaleesi and Darth Maul 2 are up to. I want to kind of see more crazy adventures of
Darth Maul 1, but yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Whatever. I'm calling him Darth Maul Tool, Fat Maul. I don't know. He was elderly Maul, whatever. That guy, the Mr. Tattoo guy, Kat Von D in space. Let's call him Space Von D. Even though he's not a tattoo artist. Anyway, I want to see that. Now, here's an interesting thing in knowing about the extended universe and how actually I could very well see that they're aiming for a trilogy of Han Solo movies, because there were actually but here's why I think this might make sense and kind of where there's a precedent for it. There were actually 2 trilogies of Han Solo books in the extended universe that were about his adventures before he hooks up with Han and Leia and everything that happens in the original trilogy. So I'm curious if that was always their intention, that they're like, well, we're going to make a Han Solo trilogy loosely based on, one of these trilogies or some of the events from those books, so that then we can kind of bring in the extended universe, which has now been deemed Legends and is no longer canon, and we can kind of still keep it canon while doing that. So I'm wondering, I was intrigued. I kind of want to see where it's going to go.
But don't you think that's going to make the problem of we don't need all this extra information even worse? I mean, if you have a whole, maybe it'll be a trilogy, but however many movies of Han Solo then fighting Khaleesi until he eventually vanquishes her and Darth Maul and the Sunset Squad or whatever their name was, if he's going to be the consummate good guy, then how are we going to be ambiguous about him at the beginning of episode 4, where he's supposed to be like, no, I don't take sides, I'm not this guy, and then, at the end, he is a good guy. Like, we can't do that ahead of time. It's going to ruin everything.
Yeah, that's 100% true. I 100% agree with you. I think I've just accepted that they're going to continue to shit on everything that was good and just about just having the original trilogy. I think I've already accepted that it's all just going to keep being this massive Disney extended universe, merchandising, commerce thing, and they're going to just continue to ruin things to service fan people. And so I'm just kind of surrendering to it. I'm just like, all right, fine.
No. It's not too late. We can end it here. We can have the next spin-off movie be with somebody else who's not Han Solo, and we can have it be a Khaleesi movie. That'd be fine. Somebody else can take care of whatever their deal is. It does not have to be Han and Chewie. Han and Chewie are going to Tatooine. Leave them alone. We don't need a million more Jabba movies. I think that's been made very clear by constantly shoving more and more Jabba into the first 3 movies every time they get re-released. No one's been in favor of that. Let's just let that ride and move on to the next spin-off movie.
You know what? I'm with you. Fine. Take Han and Chewie out of it. Great. I think you just found the solution. Let's focus on some other group of people that are going to take down this crime syndicate and face off against Khaleesi.
Definitely, right? Give somebody else a shot. Let's make it about, I would love to see it be about those Raiders, the Freckle gang.
Yeah.
What was their name?
I have no idea, but in my free association mood here, I want to say that girl is young Elia Shawkat. I don't know why. I don't know if it's because I've been seeing a lot of Arrested Development stuff lately, but she has that same kind of look, the freckles, the curly hair. So, Elia Shawkat Jr. is like in her band of rebels.
Well, I liked those righteous, more guerrilla fighting style rebels. And why don't they do it? Like, that would be great. They're the ones who've actually been persecuted by this group. They should be the ones to take it down. Hopefully they'll go that way with it.
Mm-hmm. Hopefully.
Here's a bigger problem I had with this movie.
Let's get into it.
This movie, for its own sake, which I strongly believe in looking at these movies for their own sake, regardless of how they fit into the rest of the larger schema, I just felt, in addition to there being too many plot twists that felt like they were just there for twisting, just like, ooh, another one. Yeah. The bigger issue was, what was I supposed to care about in this movie? To me, there was just way too much going on. The pacing of the movie felt very far off to me. There's so many heists. It's an escape for another heist, and then it peaked so early with the Kessel Run, and then there's a whole big chunk of movie left. Whole big chunk of movie where the real important, character important heists is then after that. It just felt like one thing and another and another. And to me, it was one of these perfect illustrations of how it's always scarier to have one bomb threatening to detonate and destroy one person in one building than it is to have 15 bombs around town and we gotta go just defuse every single one of them. It's like, it's too much. What do I care about this?
By the time that they reached the last 15 minutes of the movie, I was keeping track of how many ticking time bomb devices they had going, and I did actually have the thought, well, I guess it's a more is better theory, and they were just like, oh shit, we're losing the audience. Here's the ticking time bomb. It's you get a ticking time bomb and you get a ticking time bomb, and I don't think it was totally ineffective, but I can understand, how it diminishes it in the same way that, I think you're also right, and that having so many heists and so many betrayals, and that's just the entire movie. So it's this cycle of heist and betrayal, heist and betrayal, heist and betrayal, sleight of hand, betrayal, etc., all that kind of stuff. Yeah, by the end of it, I can see you're tired. You're just like, what's going on here?
Because you can have it work where it's, they got out of that one, and then they just fell into another one. You can have it build. But I didn't feel like it built. I didn't feel like each one was more intense than the last one. When you have one of them be, we ran into a giant intergalactic space squid, which somehow lives in the middle of this thing, next door to a black hole that tries to eat us. We managed to barely escape the black hole by not blowing up from the cargo fuel that's heating up and it's going to explode. And we explode the engine. It's just enough that we explode the engine, that we start to fall in, but then we blast off, we blow off the front of the ship, we make the Kessel run in 12.3 parsecs or whatever. We finally get when that's your middle thing, and then the next one's like, but now we have to be in a room with a blaster fight. That's not a bigger thing. You blew your wad at this black hole thing. You can't go up from there. There's nowhere up to go.
You know what? Because while I'm simultaneously agreeing with you on all of this, and this is why last night when Tristan and I were coming back from the movie, we had to just sit in the car in silence because all I wanted to do was go. But he was like, no, save it for talking about Adam. And and I was expecting this because this is my experience with this new cycle of movies. I get caught up in it, and then immediately once it's over, I start thinking about it. I'm like, So I intellectually agree with all the things you're saying, and I 100% see where you're coming from. For me, it worked, and I was going with it. You're saying the pacing of it is off. And yes, certainly in terms of like building and releasing, that's definitely.
I thought it peaked too soon. It peaked too soon, and then I don't care about. Oh my goodness, who is that person in the mask? Who cares? Did you see what already happened? Who cares about this now?
Space squid, motherfuckers. That said, none of this bothered me, and even at this moment, it doesn't really bother me because. While those peaks and valleys of build up and release were certainly definitely off, I agree with you there. That was miscalibrated. It didn't bother me because the actual pacing of the movie, how quickly you move from one moment to the next moment to the next moment to the next moment, was so fast that it kept me distracted. It kept me just like there wasn't time, And I think it worked for this movie because it's pretty threadbare. Pretty much what you see is exactly what you're getting. So having that very just like rushing from point A to point B to point C to point D thing, for me really worked. And it kept my mind off of being too distracted by that. And then when you do have that giant set piece of 15 ticking time bombs and space squid and black hole and this, like I feel like the overall energy of that, since it's still dissipating while all this other shit starts happening, that kind of helps keep the momentum going, at least for me, so that then I didn't feel like I was then in this lull of like, well, wait, what? There's more? I was like, there's more. I'm still getting over this, and you're throwing new stuff at me, and, all right, cool. And, hey, Paul Bettany's back. Like, that's cool. I'm into him. And, oh, man, Khaleesi's doing some, So I feel like for me, they were able to ride the wave of that big release in the middle. I agree with you. It kind of does, it leaves the movie on a kind of quieter note. And again, I get the cyclicalness of it and how that would become boring. But I just rode the wave again, because I had surrendered myself to it, in the beginning.
And fair enough. To me, that exactly what you say, the fact that everything's so fast paced is what was a problem to me, because I didn't feel like, there's more. I felt like, You didn't even give me time to care about the thing you wanted me to care about. You want me to care this just happened? Oh, no. We're ready the next thing. It's so fast that, like, of course I don't have time to care about this. When Visine Paul Bettany comes back, and he's all, it looks like the real thing. I'm like, I don't care about this scheme. Oh, it's a scheme about the... We barely... Oh, and he comes back in, and he betrayed. Oh, you were fast. Oh, I was listening. Like... Too much. So that by the time that the most important thing in the movie happens, and he shoots the guy first, thus finally putting to rest a major complaint from the screw-up of the episode 4, they're like, oh, good. It's like a little nod to the, Han shoots first. That's who he is. Han shoots first.
They immediately invalidated it right afterwards, though, because then he runs over and then he's like, I felt like they invalidated it. I was like, cool, Han shot. Oh, and now he's suddenly like, I'm sorry, old friend. Like, blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, like, you can stand over and be like, hey, man, I get it. But, like, then he's, like, kneeling down and they're having, like, an Aragorn Boromir moment. I'm just kind of like, oh, well, then.
Too tender for you.
What was that?
Too tender for you? It was too tender?
I mean, only just because they very obviously were trying to establish Han shot first and he's learned his lesson. So then it's sort of like what you were talking about earlier, in that the more information we have, the more it invalidates his character at the beginning of A New Hope. And that moment was, to me, very blatantly like that. Like, when we start A New Hope, he's not supposed to already be the smuggler with a heart of gold. That's his character arc, for the first movie. So then to have him shoot his former friend commander just like that, as he should have, that was supposed to be his lesson, and then to immediately afterwards be right by his side being like, oh, but I love you so much and you were a great friend and blah, blah, blah. It didn't feel consistent to his character in A New Hope, and it didn't feel consistent for like what he should have learned for this movie. Because again, it's just too much. It's also just like there's that scene earlier in the movie when we're in Star Wars World War I trenches and stuff, and there's that scene where he's talking with the main Imperial officer's like, all right, we got to march out, and then just suddenly out of nowhere, apropos of nothing, Han's like, well, we're the invading force, so maybe they're a little justified. And it's like, what? I mean, why does he have those feelings already about that? Maybe he does, or maybe he does feel that way, but that's not established or justified anywhere earlier in the movie. Why is he choosing this moment now to talk back to his main officer? Because I'm sassy. And it's just like, why? So
he is sassy. Like that, at least, sort of a throwaway nonsense line about just the fact that he doesn't believe in the Empire. He's just there to be a pilot, and now they've denied him that. I agree that it was apropos of very little, but at least that doesn't do damage to the movie.
No,
whereas I agree with you. I think that you make a good point about that. They went. I mean, it felt like such a Disney moment after he shot him that, like, the bad guy's like, that was the right thing to do. Yeah. I would have killed you. I'm glad you killed me. Like, oh, okay. So that way the lesson's not, don't kill people if you're not positive they were going to betray you.
Yeah.
Which I thought, interestingly, that earlier you talked about how this was the most adult Star Wars movie. I thought that those were the moments where I really felt not too sophisticated. Let's dumb this back down a little bit, make it a little bit more black and white.
Yeah.
But he's not supposed to be a black and white character at the beginning of 4. Mm-hmm. So we're back to that problem. Yeah. I want to do some more self-contained movie things, though.
Yeah.
Just within the context of this movie.
Oh, yeah.
I loved Lando's droid. Loved her. Loved her whole arc.
The streak of wonderful droid side characters continues. They've got that nailed down.
This, I thought, was the best one yet. I thought she was the best one yet. Mm-hmm. I love that she is the spirit of the Millennium Falcon at the end of the movie. I thought that was an actually nice tie-in. And I love the fact that they managed to pull off some kind of chemistry between her and the other human characters in a way that was tremendous. But the fact that her sacrifice was not treated with the same level of reverence as everybody else kind of went against exactly what she stood for, which bummed me out. bummed me out.
Yeah. I mean, I would personally lump that into pretty much all the characters in this movie who die get absolutely no time for reflection, no nothing. They just die.
Because it's too fast. The movie's too fast.
In that regard, I 100% agree with you. You know, it definitely works both ways. On the one hand, it just moved me along so fast that I was like, whoa, but what about your friends and your girlfriend who just died in this terrible, heist gone? Okay, well, we're already, all right, you've moved on, I'm moving on, great. But then, yeah, certainly from a objective, let's take a step back perspective, I 100% agree. Because, I mean, Tessa Thompson shows up on screen in anything, and I'm immediately on her side. I'm like, oh, yeah, you're awesome. I want to see everything. Oh, wow. And then you just got, like, no recognition, no nothing. And the droid, she's just like, it's just like, oh, and then that was over real quick. And okay. I agree. There were problems.
What are you going to do?
Like I said at the beginning, the only reason I feel the only reason I feel so positively about this movie, I think, is just because from the beginning they gave me enough in the beginning to just accept that this is what's going to happen, and then I just rode with it, and and there were good moments. You know what though? I think, speaking of that, like, well, why am I with this movie then? Because I'm sitting here, wait, hang on. Before we get to something that's good, since we're on this like what annoyed the shit out of me, let's talk about a moment. Let's talk about for me, there have been many groan-inducing moments in these other movies and trying to play fan service and trying to be cute with stuff and whatever. Yeah, yeah. Let's get to the one moment in this movie that made me groan and under my breath in the theater say, boo.
Yeah. What was it?
It was the moment where he's escaping the spaceport and he's signing up for the Imperial Navy, and the guy says, Han, what's your last name?
Yeah. And they coins him Solo.
Who's your people? Oh, I don't have people. I'm alone. Okay, Solo. Why? So stupid. It's just like in Rogue One, where they're stealing the ship and the control tower guy's like, hey, what's your call sign? And then just out of nowhere, no reason, no explanation, never touch on it again. Oh, we're Rogue One. Shit, we got to work this in somehow. And it's just like, what? Why can't his last name just be Solo? And why'd you have to have this really forced, stupid thing? And we find out later he has a dad. He knew his dad, so he obviously has a family. And we're living in a universe where one of the major dynasties, their last name is Skywalker. Why can't this just be a universe where people have goofy last names like Skywalker and Solo? Why did it have to turn into this like symbolic thing? Oh, I'm alone. Random Imperial officer number 17 is like, haha, you sure are, kid. Han Solo. Have at it.
Yeah. Angry. A perfect metaphor for the movie as a whole, I think. And before we run out of time, I want to know overall your thoughts. What would you give this? Out of 10, you got to rate it. What is your rate?
I give it an 8. 8 out of 10.
8 out of 10 is pretty good.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Oh, like okay. I'm very surprised. That's much higher than I was expecting after this conversation.
You know what? Again, it's solid entertainment. And actually, and this kind of brings me back to something I wanted to say before I got to that Solo thing. The through line that carried me through, first of all, whatever character Alan Eldritch was playing, I was into it. I almost want to say it's like he was playing Han Solo, playing Mal Reynolds, playing some other kind of space cowboy thief type person. But he has charisma.
Hashtag not my Solo.
Correct. And I recognize that. But his charisma and his charm pulled me through. But the main through line that kept me interested in this movie, that kept me like, is his relationship with Qi'ra. And I do remember her name. I just like to call her Khaleesi. But his relationship with Qi'ra, it was simple. It was just, hey, we're thrown together by circumstances, but we're together, we're in it, we have this partnership. It was simple. I found it sweet. I thought they had chemistry. Like I believed that they were into each other, and I believed in his, inherent sort of boyishness. I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna save my girl. That just kind of like really clean. It's very much a throwback to the 1930s serials in a way. Just like it's very clean, very simple. I'm gonna go back and get my girl. And I believed that she really did care about him, and that tension and that conflict between them, I was into it, and I was genuinely interested in how are they going to end up at the end of the movie. So even as these other character deaths were glossed over and ignored, even as like they blew their wad with Space Squid and Black Hole and all this other stuff and whatever repetitiveness and whatever, I was genuinely invested in their relationship, and that helped pull me through the whole movie.
Mm-hmm. But once they were together, off on this mission,
Mm-hmm.
it didn't bother you at all that he didn't push her harder to be like, let's just leave. His whole thing, he's trying to convince everybody, let's just run away. Why don't you just run away? And people are like, no, people would find us. He's always Mr. Let's just run away from what's going on. He had her on a ship. We'll just book it. Let's just, like, he didn't even try. I thought that was a little weird. He didn't even really try to talk to her about it that much. That, to me, was pretty strange.
Honestly, it
didn't bump for you.
On my radar, or
okay,
or you know, or when they did talk about it, whatever fleeting things. Oh no, somebody will find us. Plus, wasn't he? He was still interested in getting money out of it. Like, wasn't that why he stuck around?
Well, and to me, that's the big problem with how simple that motivation is. Because the first time when he and his Woody Harrelson boss, Woody Harrelson's like, you don't have to come with me. He doesn't know your face. You can just get out of this and go someplace. I was like, well, but we might get the money, right? I thought you were doing, your whole stated reason was you were doing this to get back home, to get your girl, and now you're going to enter in this whole separate, unrelated thing that could take forever or kill you for the money? And then, conveniently, Qi'ra's involved in this directly, so now we've tied the plot back together. But he didn't know that. It's been 3 years, you're finally out of the military. You seem to have done that as just sort of a, oh God, this is my only option. You got out, you had a job, you have an easy out from the job, and you don't take it? That already primed me, and then I was like, Qi'ra's there, I guess they're going to gloss over that. But then they have kind of a half conversation about, oh good, we've left now, let's go. She's like, you wouldn't understand. He's like, I think I would understand. And people are like, let's get back to work. Like, well, you don't ever go back to that again? You're doing it for the money? What do you care about the money? You're on the ship already. Steal the damn ship. I thought that was your whole thing. Your introduction as a character is you're a ship thief. You're a car burglar. Like, never relevant again? Okay.
Yeah.
To me, it bumped. I get the clarity of it, and I agree about their chemistry, and I just like the two of them, so I wanted the two of them to work out.
Yep.
But to me, the storyline didn't quite work, and especially she doesn't warn him at all that she's in that final scene with Mr. Visine, and he's going to talk about like what are we going to do about this? He's been caught, and she's giving all these suggestions, and she's very cold about it. And I get that it's supposed to be an act, but she doesn't even try to defend him. Mm-hmm. She doesn't even try to like vouch for him or anything. She's very distant about it, which I was like, come on, this is the moment. You've been caught already. You didn't, you're not even gonna... and especially since, at that point, her intention was already, I'm going to try to get out of this and like kill Mr. Visine. It was weird. It was a weird time for that whole thing to drop off, especially because I'm then supposed to care that she abandons Han. Mm-hmm. It felt like a miscalculation to me. I'm glad you enjoyed it, and I'm glad you gave it an 8 out of 10. I don't feel comfortable giving this any more than a 5.5 out of 10.
Wow.
I think 5.5 out of 10. Fine. Okay. Yeah, I made a lot of mistakes. 5.5. That's the best I can do. It really is.
Well, you know what? And, I think I said this a couple times. I would not be surprised if I watched this movie again and then all the kinds of things you're talking about jump out at me, and suddenly now that I know everything that's going to happen, and now that I had because that was how The Force Awakens was. The first time I saw Force Awakens, I was just swept away. I was like, wow, that felt so good. That was so cool. They did a lot of cool stuff. Then I saw it again, and I was like, holy shit, they really fucked up with so many things. So so I wouldn't be surprised if in repeat viewings I come down from it. a little bit more. But with this first take, with this hot take, I'm gonna stick to my guns. I'm gonna shoot first. Say 8 out of 10.
Okay, well there you have it, everybody. I guess I was the one who should have quick drawn on that one, but he got me with his 8 out of 10 right in the heart. And if you change your mind, Ryan, let us know. We'll follow up with you. But in the meantime, thank you all very much for joining us for this episode of Inside Voices First Takes, where we've, of course, been talking about Solo, a Star Wars story. Thanks for sticking around to the end. I apologize for the fact that I'm a little bit sick. I hope my voice didn't completely freak you out over there at home. Join us next time for another episode. And if you'd like some bonus nitpicks, stick around.